Do you remember these? Greeting card baskets, bowls made out of Christmas cards, wrapping paper, things like that. Well, I became obsessed with them, and I started collecting them when I could find them at thrift stores, eBay. So I started my collection, and then I began working with Spellbinders, and I'm like, hey, you guys, let's turn this into a die. And that's what we did. So now instead of having to cut out your own templates and punch all the holes, you know, and try to align them with your little punch, these are now dies that you can just run your paper through your your die cutting machine, and then you can do, because it's deep etch dies, you can do multiple layers, cardstock, even thin chipboard. So you can sandwich your pieces all at once, cut them, and then all you have left to do is to string them together. So I'm very excited about this product. There's the base. This is one base. The square is another base. You can use these, you can sew these together however you want. You can just connect all of these together and make sort of a ball if you wanted to. This is a scalloped edge side. Here's a pointy edge side. This one, if you turn it this way and connect it, it creates curved sides of a bowl. Although this can be a base, it can also be sides of a container, which you can then use like with this. So I'm going to show you some examples of the things I've been playing with. Now, you don't have to be someone who crochets, even though these look spectacular when they're crocheted together. I tend to do more of a blanket stitch. Some people would like to lace them. It just kind of depends. So I'm going to show you all the different ways I've done this, and I'm thrilled with these. So, you know, hopefully this is just the beginning of many different shapes to come. I'll even show you some ideas that I have for the future, but very excited to show these to you today. They're just now becoming available on the Spellbinders website. So this is one of my first baskets. So here's what the dies look like. You can see they're deep etch dies, so they're very thick. They'll cut. And I've been collecting all kinds of different threads and strings. I'm a thrifter, so I go to thrift stores and I'll see something, I'll go, I bet that would be really great for stringing up a basket. And as far as what to string them with, it kind of depends on what you're going to do. If you're crocheting, you're going to want to find a crochet hook that's going to actually fit through the holes, right? This is a 1. So that fits through really good. And as long as, you know, you can pull whatever thread or yarn you're using through. So this is just a simple 1-stitch blanket stitch, or what are they called? They're called blanket stitches. I think there's another name for it. This is some kind of funky suede yarn that I found and created this basket. This is just using some of my Spellbinders papers from my first collection. How cute is that? I use these all over the studio. I'm always putting stuff in them when I go. I like to do projects where I'll load up and take everything into the house in a bowl. Another great idea is using these, if you're going to be doing like a blanket stitch. Tapestry needles are good because they're blunt at the end. They're not super sharp. They're not going to poke or snag on anything. But they have a nice big eye to fit stuff through. So again, I find all kinds of things at thrift stores. So if you're out shopping, start looking for these kind of things in, usually they're in the case at the thrift stores because they're so tiny, but they're not that expensive to buy. So my point in all of this is I'm not going to tell you to settle on any one kind of crafting, you know, yarn or thread, because there's just so many options. So this is just one. Here's one that I made with yarn and some gift wrap. This is just basic yarn. This looks like it's a smaller yarn. And again, I'm not someone who knits or crochets much, so I don't really know what maybe size that is. This is just a blanket stitch. Saddle stitch, I think, is another name for it. Here's another one, and I used, this is like crochet thread, I believe. Had a little shine and glitter to it. So my Christmas papers are being released today as well. So I wanted to show you, like, here's a basket made with them. And the stickers are a little bit behind in being released, but they're going to be released soon. But I've added some stickers from the Christmas collection. How fun is that, right? So that's just the basic shape for the bottom and then the scalloped edges. So then I started getting kind of funky, and this is pages out of a yearbook, right? Same concept. And then I found this actually at the thrift store. This is Silken Straw. This was kind of fun to work with. It wasn't very thick. And that was a crochet attempt. So I'm not really great at crochet. It does have a really neat effect. Here's a vintage one. And this is where they crocheted and then they came back and they did this really pretty scalloped edge. I'm not quite there yet in skill level, but you don't have to be to connect these things. And even a blanket stitch might be a little bit much for you, but I'll show you some other options too. Because the whole idea is just getting these put together in any manner you can. Let's see. So, well, this was an experiment. I'm not sure I love this one so much, but I thought, oh, that's kind of fun. It's a sort of a chenille yarn, and it's a little bulky, I think. This, again, is some of the Christmas paper, but it's kind of cool. But you see how the edge curves out using that one side die? Here's another one. I just used raffia, and this isn't even a crochet or a blanket stitch. I just put the pieces together. I start with the base, and then I attach all the sides, so it's kind of like a base, and then the sides are all fanned out. And then I bring up one side at a time and stitch it together. This is kind of fun to work with because it has a little bit of a grip. It doesn't slide through your holes so fast, and you can use a needle to slide the end pieces kind of through to hide them when you're done. And see, I'm just using manila folder card, as a sort of a cardstock. Works out really great. When you're doing the curved ones, you don't want too thick of layering because you want it to curve. You want it to be a little easy to manipulate and work with you there. Okay, well, here's one. This is just the square sides. This is an album cover. It was kind of had these great images on it. Holiday, I think it was a holiday album cover. And again, I don't even know what this is, but I found it at the thrift store, and it was, it's kind of cool. It's very shiny. You might know what that is, but it made a beautiful stitch, blanket stitch. And this is just vintage shelving paper. Maybe you recognize it. But album covers are really great. I'll show you another album cover. This is not the die that I have yet, but I wanted to show you when I was experimenting with the whole concept. What did I do? I think I just painted the inside, the backside's black, and then used album cover cutouts. Again, this was using a prototype. This isn't a shape I have just yet, but I wanted to show you the stitching. This is that plastic, what is it, plastic lace? Remember that from like the 80s? But how cute is this? Looks like something from a record shop. You can use the little squares just to make little square boxes. Look, this is just vintage packaging. Like little party favors, right? You could make a little hoop or something for it, make little baskets for Easter. Oh my gosh, there's so many things you can do with these. This one is, again, the scalloped sides with just the square base. And these are just some of my vintage bingo cards. This is wrapping paper on the other side. So the bingo cards were nice and heavy. And then I just used a little bit of glue to glue them together. And what I did is I glued and sandwiched them together, and then I ran it through the machine. But you don't have to do that. You can also cut out all your outsides, cut out all your insides, cut out all the pieces you're going to sandwich in between. You can have little pieces everywhere. And then just with a glue stick, just kind of stick them all together in the layers you like and start lacing. It doesn't even take that much adhesive to get the front to the back, as long as they're just sort of put together in place, and then just start lacing. And look, see, basic, simple blanket stitch, nothing to that. I think that's just hemp cord. Maybe that's all that is. I always pick this stuff up everywhere I go, and I was going through some drawers and I found, oh my gosh, I have all this cool stuff. Okay, this one's fun. You guys have seen these, right? Vintage cabinet cards are really heavy. So these are actually very heavy, and that's about as thick as I think you're going to want to put through the machine at one run. But look what I made. I've made an ornament. This is out of the triangle sides, turned upside down. This is just sort of a crochet thread that's very sparkly. This is just using one side and then tasseling at the bottom. And then here's the bowl. So I didn't sandwich anything. This is just front to back what they look like. And a basic, simple blanket stitch. So nice and heavy, and that went right through the machine just fine. And the ornament, I'm actually going to teach this ornament in Dixon in October. And here's another one. I sent this ahead of time for the class, so I don't have it with me, but just to show you, again, this is some hemp cord, just using the triangle. Let's see if I have that here. Here's the triangle. This one. Turned upside down, right? And you can make sort of like ornament with treats inside or something, or you can add some foliage in there. Add some stickers. This is, again, some of my Christmas paper. This is one I made the other night. The other day I was actually at the library bookstore, and there was this really cool magazine. I love funky graphics like this. And so I started cutting it up in the shapes and made this. So I made a box using the main larger base, square sides, did an extra base piece for the top, and then hinged it. So now I have this really neat box. Put a little bead on the end as the opener. Oh, also, this is kind of fun. Not only did I do the magazine pages and I put them on top of, I sandwiched between them the manila folder, but then I found I had a pad of Duraline, or, just you can use like a clear acetate, like slide projector film, things like that, and cut those out too, and then put that on the outer side, and now you have this really awesome shine. A little more plasticky looking, if that's what you're going for. I love this box. And that was just this basic crochet thread that I used. I'm running out of it. It's actually, it was even kind of dingy. I've had this for so long, and I didn't know in the future I'd get to use that for this. Using that side thing again, this die, and not adding a base, I made this. It's sort of like a crown, right? So this is some of my Christmas paper and things. This is all the Christmas paper and a little bit of acetate, one of my stamps. Again, just blanket stitched together. So what's nice about this is it makes a crown for your head, but it also makes sort of a neat greeting card folded up. So even if you wanted to do one in a birthday theme and send it, tuck it in an envelope, maybe a padded envelope, it folds up pretty thin, and send it off like, here's your birthday crown. So, I mean, I just think there's just so many different things to be made with these dies. I'm so excited about them. I'm going to show you just a few other projects I made. This is before the dies came out and we had settled on the first round of them. So this one isn't one, this is the sides, but this is a much bigger bottom. And this is also the pedestal shape that we don't have yet. But excuse me, what I want to show you is I collaged all my pieces first and then I cut them. So I take this, what I'll do is like this. I'll have my basic shape like this. And maybe I'll cut out something, I'll draw a line around it and have like a template. And I'll use that template and create a bunch of collages based on that template with a little bit of overhang. And then when I run it through, it makes this really tidy cut. What in the world did I do there? I think I tried, that was my attempt at crochet. I think that might have been my first attempt at crochet. It's not super pretty, but it really kind of funky to go with a collage. So this is using just bits and things around the studio. This is using some of my papers from Spellbinders, lots of book pages, stamps. So everything was collaged flat and then cut out. So if you're into collage, this is just going to be so much fun. Things like this I keep around the studio, and I put like this one, in fact, I use and put embroidery floss in. There's another one. Again, these are not the same shapes, but you can just see this is just basic like crochet thread or something. It's kind of a little bit thin, so you kind of have to experiment with what works for you. This one I used, and again, these are not the shapes that are available just yet, but maybe in the future if these become popular products. But I wanted to show you, this is just vintage packaging again. This is for Christmas lights, but it made a really neat, you know, container. And then I just used wrapping paper on the inside. But here's a lesson I learned. If you're going to have a bowl like this that has curved sides, be sure that whatever's going on the inside, you do a solid amount of glue. Here I probably just tacked it as a sandwich, and then when it curves in, it crinkled. See that? So if you're going to do something with a curve to it, be sure that the inside is completely covered in glue before sandwiching. Hopefully that made sense. Here's just a couple more. Again, this is just the basic curved sides. This was a bigger bottom. We don't have just yet, but I just wanted to show you. These are some of my papers from my first collection. And again, and here's one where I used, I found some plastic, clear plastic, and I just did maps. This is a bigger one, not one that's available now, but this is just as an example to show you just the simple blanket stitch. This is one I punched by hand in the very beginning when I'm like, oh, I could just make my own, but this was a real pain. This is a lot of work. And then it occurred to me, what if this was a die? So that's kind of how the whole thing started. Now, if you're just someone's like, that's great, but I'm never going to sew or stitch. Well, here's another little thing I've been working on. So just practicing. If you put your piece together and you just kind of tape the edges, you can make a form, and you could do this with a bowl as well, and then you just collage over it. So you don't have to sew. You can just bring the pieces together with tape and then decoupage over it like that. No stitching needed. You can see I'm still working on it, but this is using one of my favorite tools in the studio, and that is packaging tape, the kind that's just water adhesive tape. I know that's really ugly. I haven't finished it, but this is just to show you can totally decoupage and not stitch if you didn't want to. Well, I think that's the gist of my show and tell on my new products. These are available at spellbinders.com, and some of the stores I'm sure will be selling them soon. They're a little bit on the pricier side because they are, again, the deep etched dies, and you're going to be able to cut so many more things at once. It's really great. And then the little poking out of the holes, I just use a thumbtack, and I keep a bowl of all my little holes, and I have this nice bowl of confetti for something in the future. It's really fun. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I look forward to seeing what you make with them. Thanks for joining me.